Redditors who are the product of rape or incest, how did you find out? Did you ever confront the perpetrator or perpetrators? Serious. Throwaway for obvious reasons. My dad basically raped my mom to have me. My mother never wanted a kid her entire life, and kind of hated children in general. My dad knew this when he married her, but I think secretly it was always his plan to somehow find a way to have a kid. He tried to get her drunk quite a few times, so she would forget about a condom and whatnot, but it never worked. One day, he came home from a night of hard partying with his friends, and basically had his way with my mom. She resisted and tried to fight him off when she figured out what his intent was, but was overcome. My dad told me all of this when we went fishing last year. He thought I would be happy with the story and think of him as some sort of hero. I don't. Hey, it's my thread to shine. Okay, so my real parents are my mom and her twin brother. No, I'm not Joffrey. I found out last summer when I was 15. It was nighttime and I came down a staircase to get a glass of water. My mom was laying on the sofa. She had been drinking earlier. She doesn't usually get drunk. She likes to drink wine, but never really enough to get drunk. But this time she was really drunk. I passed her on the way to the kitchen, and she just spoke up and said that she was glad I wasn't her husband's child. I asked her what the was she talking about when she told me that her brother was the father of me and my siblings. She stated it was the reason why we were so perfect. I haven't confronted my mom or her brother about it. My mom either pretends she never told me, or she was too drunk to remember. I'm 100% sure it was consensual incest, not rape. My mom talks to her brother a lot, and she always visits him. My dad is always away, so sometimes my mom will bring us to her brother's house, and we'll sleep over. Me and my siblings even have our own rooms at his house. Serious question for everyone who responded to this question. I have a daughter who is the product of rape. I gave her up to a wonderful family, and she is very loved. I see her often. This last Christmas she asked why I gave her up. She's only 6. I told her that I loved her so much that I realized I couldn't take care of her and gave her to the best mommy and daddy I could find. Here's my question. She will ask about her father. How? What? I don't even know how to address that or what to say when it comes up. TLDR. Gave baby that was a product of rape up for open adoption. What do I say when she asks about her father? Throwaway for the obvious reason. I'm the product of rape incest. My father/grandfather raped and impregnated my mom when she was 13. We came from an extremely religious family at the time, so abortion was never an option. From my understanding of things, this had been going on between him and my mother for a lot of years. He went to jail, where he still is. I have thought about going to see him a lot over the years, just out of morbid curiosity, but I have never done it. There was never really any secret about it. My mom and her mother raised me. They scaled the information about the situation to age appropriate levels, but they never hid anything. It was weird, and I got some counseling about it when I hit my teen years, but to be honest, I feel like it never really strongly affected me. When I was in my early 20s my biological mother contacted me. I always knew I was adopted, but it was never a big deal to me, because I always knew. My adoptive mother was never any less of a mother to me, in any kind of way. Anyways, my biological mother contacted me in my early 20s. I had children already, and had a lot on my plate at the time. I wasn't trying to deal with her at the time, because I had only recently overcome my childish fears and behaviors, and was becoming a man quickly, because I needed to because I had children already at an early age. I did talk to her a few times, and she acted funny when I asked about my father. She said she hadn't seen him since back when I was born. I pried about it, and she just said, well maybe someday I will tell you. So she tried to act like we were long lost relatives, but I kinda felt like, hey you abandoned me, you made that choice. I felt that I should have been the one looking for her, if that is what I wished. I dunno, it's complicated to explain these feelings, but I had no hate in my heart at all. I was, at the time, patching up everything with my mom from my teenage years, when I was douche party guy in high school, and did some things. Like I said, I had enough on my plate, and I cared about my children and their future. That was my focus. so I didn't really stay in contact with her. The last letter she sent me, she let me know that I was the product of her being raped at the age of 17. At the time I was like wow, but it didn't really hit me for about 10 more years when the US recession hit my area hard and I lost my job and became depressed. I was all drunk and crying and pathetic and told my wife, I'm just a king rape baby. Yep, bad times man. I have come a long way since then and things are way better now. But my children are in high school and one is graduated, and now I'm starting to think about contacting my biological mom. I'm the product of rape. My mother told me when I was 5, but thankfully used language that wasn't violent or distressing. She told me she loved me very much, but that this was the reason I didn't have a daddy like the other kids. She was 18, drugged at a party, and ushered into a private room by several other girls when she started to feel weird. She passed out on the bed fully clothed. She had been invited to the party by a guy she knew. She awoke to that man raping her. She blacked out again and woke up the next morning naked and badly bruised. This was in the 80s. She reported the incident to the police, including the man's name and where he lived with his family. He was 16 or 17. Nothing happened. I'm glad my mother told me so early. We have our own issues and are now estranged, but I've always been thankful that she explained it to me in a clear and gentle way. I have self-worth issues that I sometimes think could be connected to being the child of rape. I've never hidden this fact from people who ask, and sometimes volunteer it to those that make disparaging comments about rape babies. Awful people in my past have used the circumstances of my existence as a way to hurt and belittle me. The most common response I receive when I share my birth story is I'm so sorry. Edit. I've thought often about confronting the man that raped my mother. I've known his first and last name for years, as well as his appearance at 16/17 and what state/city/area his family lived in at that time. I once contacted a man via Facebook with his name and features, eye and hair color, built, that went to a high school in the matching area. He had pictures of a daughter that had similar facial features to me, though it was likely a coincidence. I asked if he had known a woman by my mother's name in the year I was conceived. The message was read, but I received no reply. Half of my genetic family history is a complete mystery, and sometimes I think it would be nice to know. As a young teenager I fantasized about him being someone famous/important, and how discovering my existence would inconvenience his life or cost him respect. I also entertained the thought that he was nice and normal and maybe not a horrible person. Maybe he'd get to know me and love me, and maybe I would have half siblings. I'm an only child. This might be long but okay, so my parents are technically my adopted parents. Trouble with conceiving their own kids. They went through an adoption agency and adopted my brother, and then 9 years later, me, my brother and I are not blood related. With both adoptions, they went to a family therapist to make sure they were doing everything right, and were told to tell me once a year, every year until I was 8, that I was adopted, and one day it will stick, and I'll remember it. So basically I grew up knowing I was adopted, but didn't care too much, because my parents were my parents. I'm 22 now, so about 4 years ago I asked if they knew more about my biological parents. My mom gave me all the paperwork from the adoption agency and a diary that was kept while I was in foster care for 3 months. Basically, my birth mother was in the army, was home and at a party. Some guy she met followed her home and raped her. She was back overseas when she found out she was pregnant with me. She was 21 and not really able to have a kid, so she made the decision that I'll always be grateful for. It honestly hasn't affected me that negatively. Yeah, it sucks to think about. I wasn't necessarily made out of love, and pretty much all my physical features come from my biological father, just based on the description my biological mother gave in the paperwork about the rape. I hope to someday meet my biological mother, but know that I probably won't meet my father, nor would I want to, just because of the fact that he was some random dude that followed her home. It's also heavily influenced my opinions on abortion. At the end of the day, I love my parents. They're all I've known, and are the best in the world, and gave me everything I could ever ask for. I also do have this love for my birth mother though, a woman I've never known. She was in a terribly situation, but made a strong decision that my life literally depended on, and I love her for it. I'm a bit late into this, but my dad was born from a rape. He found out when I was 8 years old. The day he found out was when I lost my dad. It ked him up so bad. He had picked up drinking and gambling. On average he would drink about a 12-pack a day. It was ked up because he was such a good man before he found out. Up to this day we still don't know who would have told him this, but I feel like if I ever found out, I wouldn't be able to forgive that person. My father used up our savings and basically used all of our money on beer and horse racing. On day when my mother confronted him and told him to leave us alone forever, he replied to her, "I will leave you, and I will never bother you again, and I swear I will pay you back all the money I've used stolen from you." 2 months later he passed. Shortly after, my mother received thousands of dollars in social security money. Still king miss him. I'm late to the thread, but I'm a product of rape. My mother met my father, who was a crack and heroin addict, and had my older sister with him. They got married, and he started beating her and my sister regularly. The abuse went on for years, until he was brazenly bringing women home to in front of her, and my mom had enough and left. She had nowhere to go, and was sleeping couch to couch with my sister. He looked everywhere for her, found her somehow and raped her. I was conceived. When I was born he tried to say I was the neighbor's child and my mom was sleeping around, even though I'm the spitting image of his mother. Anyway, he tried to choke me to death as an infant. My mom stabbed him with a hot dog poker, not sure of the name, but it's the utensil you use to turn over hot dogs on a grill. He went to jail and got out a few years later, and my stepfather shot him when he resumed stalking my mother. I found out I was a product of rape from my little sister, using it as a way to make fun of me in an argument. My mom confirmed it nonchalantly when I asked if it was true. My family is all types of ked up. Funny story, he sent me a friend's request on Facebook a few days ago, trying to get in contact with me 28 years later. It's sad. I do not want a relationship with a guy who has raped and beat most of the women he has in his life. A few years ago I met a girl at a mutual friend's house who ended up telling me how her grandfather was also her father, so this girl's mother was raped by her own father. She told me this because I had given her a bracelet that I was wearing. I make jewelry and like to hand it out. I have very tiny wrists, and she was so excited that it fit her. She was excited about that because on one hand she was missing a thumb and her hand was just kinda strange looking and small, so most bracelets would slide off. We ended up taking some hits out of a gas mask / bong, my first time ever doing so, and she told me about her father / grandfather as an explanation for her hand. She also told me about how her brother raped her, even on the day her mother died. I think it's safe to say incest was common in her family. You wouldn't have really noticed anything different about her unless you knew, but she was quite small and just a tad strange looking. Plus, yeah, no, deformed hand. Honestly, it was pretty surreal being so stoned and having this girl who was mostly a stranger tell me this so calmly. This was in the ghetto, and she was with her boyfriend and their baby. She was very sweet, a real spunky firecracker type girl. I've never seen her since, but I think of her often. I hope her life turned out alright. So yeah, not my story, but it's one that always stuck with me.